geniuses compared to the least eminent geniuses, two themes emerge, and this is quoted verbatim from the report. True geniuses have the tangibility, not always seeking something fresh because of novelty, not always looking for a change. This is what I mean by a consistency of interest, going deep and not going too broad at the expense. The tendency not to abandon tasks in the face of obstacles, perseverance, tenacity, and doggedness. In other words, geniuses have passion and perseverance for the long term. This is how I define grit. And I'd like to tell you why I think it's important, but I'd like to spend most of my time talking about what we might do to cultivate this quality in students. I do want to say one word about talent, which is that I think it exists. I'm not here to tell you that all children learn equally well, equally easily, but I will say this: multiply any number by 0 and you get 0. And effectively, many students, when they drop out, when they stop trying, when they've given up on themselves, when we've given up on them, whatever talent they have, and I think it's really unknowable, we don't really know how much talent anyone has, we do know that if you multiply that talent by 0, you get 0. And I think that happens all too often. Now here's bringing you up to the 21st century on the science of high achievers. We started off with Francis Galton in 1869, but what do we know in 2016? If you look at the research on world-class experts in any domain, from chess to ballet to mathematics to radiology, you get a graph that looks like this. Skill is on the vertical axis, and years of practice are on the horizontal axis. And only the world-class experts are able to stay on the learning curve for those many years, typically thousands and thousands of hours spread out over years and years. Nothing magic about the number 10,000, about the number 10 years, but it's roughly that kind of magnitude. You do not become an expert in 1 year. You don't become an expert in 3 years. It's around 10 or so that you could ascend to level of skill where you would be recognized internationally. What happens to most of us, however, is that we fall off the dark black line and we stay on the plateau of arrested development. I had plenty of teachers when I was growing up who were clearly very comfortable on the plateau of arrested development. They were fine. Nothing went horribly wrong in their classrooms, but they didn't strive to get better year after year after year. Finally, you have dropouts. If you take any human skill and you stop practicing it completely, your skill will just regress to baseline, which is nearly 0. Now, what is it about staying on that top black line of world-class expertise that's so hard? The black line, the learning curve of world-class expertise, requires that you do what's called deliberate practice. Now, everybody in this room is an educator. I challenge you to think of the number of seconds or minutes that students you know are truly engaging in all 4 of these things at once. And the reason I say seconds or minutes instead of hours is because, for example, when you study Olympic athletes and you calculate how much time they're truly doing deliberate practice, it's really only on the order of 3 to 5 hours a day. It's incredibly hard. And let me tell you more about it before we start misestimating or overestimating how much any of us are doing. And by that, I also include ourselves, the educators. When you are doing deliberate practice, you have a specific stretch goal in mind. By that, I mean you are specifically working on something that you know you cannot yet do. Sounds simple, but human beings do not like doing things that they cannot do. Things that you cannot do, you're clumsy, you're confused, you're incredibly frustrated, but it's a non-starter in terms of deliberate practice if you're working on something that's already fairly fluent. Now, the second aspect of deliberate practice is this: full 100% concentration. In fact, when you study experts, even experts who play team sports like basketball, they're often actually practicing alone. And you might ask the